Coming up on Locked On Dodgers for the 10th time in the last 11 years, the Dodgers are the National League West champions. They clinched over the weekend, sweeping the Mariners. We'll talk all about that series, the clinching celebration, including some interesting comments from Andrew Friedman about what the pitching staff might look like in the postseason. And then we will maybe argue a little bit about what that pitching staff should look like. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. That's my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And Vince, it was a good weekend for the Dodgers. We went in knowing they had a chance to clinch over the weekend. We also knew it would be a tough task because the Giants were playing the Rockies, and the Mariners have a very good pitching staff and are battling for their playoff lives. So we knew it was going to be a dogfight in the series. In the end, the Giants proverbially pooped the bed in Colorado, and the Dodgers did the opposite in Seattle, sweeping the Mariners. And on Saturday night, the combination of the Giants loss and the Dodgers win meant that the Dodgers officially clinched the National League West for the 10th time in the last 11 years. And remember, the one time they didn't win the National League West, they won 106 games. It has been a pretty darn good 11 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, there's still some teams, or at least one team in the league that's never won the division, the Marlins, and the Dodgers have now won 10 of the last 11. So, it's one of those things where we've kind of, essentially, it's become a formality in the last decade for Dodger fans to be like, oh yeah, NL West, to the point where some people do not care that the Dodgers win the NL West, but it gets you a guaranteed spot in the playoffs, and where they're sitting now, a guaranteed bye in the playoffs. So we're not going to take that for granted. And as you saw by some of the celebrations, the guys were having, they're not taking it for granted either. They had a lot of first timers in terms of rookies. David Peralta, even in one of the videos the Dodgers posted, is trying to take off the cork in the bottle, and he's like, "I'm not used to doing this," and he's been in the league for a long time. So it's good, the first step, of moving forward into October baseball, and you don't ever get tired of it.
Yeah, and I was definitely gratified to see at least what I saw on social media. I didn't see anybody complain that they were celebrating when it's not the end goal. And I think some of that is because expectations coming into this year were a little bit different than usual. You and I expected the Dodgers to win the National League West. We believed all along that the Dodgers were the best team in the division. We thought it would be closer than it was. We thought the Padres would push them. Turns out that didn't happen. But a lot of people, most of the experts, picked the Padres to win this division. And the Dodgers came into the season as underdogs, which I don't know they've ever done that before. And so I do think that Dodger fans this year appreciated it a little bit more, especially with all that they've been through with the pitching injuries and, obviously other situations that have cost them pitchers. So much garbage, so many different ways that this season could have gone off the rails. And instead, ho-hum, just another division title.
Yeah, and you saw it in all the Dodgers and all the stuff we saw from the clubhouse. It feels cliche, or sometimes maybe us putting a lot of stock into things like, oh, this team feels different, or whatever the case. But it is a little bit different. For the last while, we know Justin Turner as being the guy that's kind of been the leader of the clubhouse and everything else. And that wasn't there, and they didn't necessarily have someone for sure that was going to step up. Like, and Mookie and Freddie were the guys that Dave Roberts talked about maybe stepping up, but they've always led in a different way in general, and not so much maybe in a vocal way. And even now, like, you saw Miguel Rojas speak, you saw Jason Hayward speak, those guys are veterans, but also guys that have, been through a lot of different things. And, now with the Dodgers here, and it's not always your best player that is kind of the leader or someone that puts it together. And, especially with Rojas and Hayward, Dave Roberts mentioned both of them as guys that at one point in the season said something or did something that kind of showed what the value they have. So, yeah, it was, cool to see all the celebrations, especially with the young guys. Clayton Kershaw never misses the chance to kind of, celebrate, let loose a little bit. And, he continued to do that, especially as he went, 4 innings in that game Saturday. And we don't really know what to expect from him, kind of the rest of the way this season and even into the future. So, and like he said, you never know if this might be your last one. So you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. And that's actually literally true. This could have been Kershaw's last celebration. Hopefully they have 3 more this year. It was kind of funny to me that they kept mentioning that 3 more celebrations, even though they haven't officially clinched that they don't have to play in the wild card series yet. So hope the Brewers don't use that as what do they call that? Blackboard material.
Oh yeah. Blackboard material.
So yeah, I guess Jason Hayward might actually be their best player right now, based on this weekend. Hayward had a great weekend. But yeah, I almost felt bad for Justin Turner that, like, everybody talking about how this, Dave Roberts said, this is my favorite team. It's like, Dave Roberts loves Justin Turner. He wants him to be the next manager of the Dodgers, and when Turner left the Dodgers, there was all the talk about, well, it probably won't be one person who fills that void. Several people will have to step up to do different things that Justin Turner's always done. And that's probably what's happened, but I don't think anybody would have envisioned that. I mean, it's almost a surplus of leadership between Kershaw and Mookie and Freddie and Hayward and Rojas and JD Martinez and David Peralta. Like, what's that? 7 or 8 guys who are veterans who everybody respects and who are playing well and, on and off the field. Like, it's just huge. And especially for a team that has had 16 rookies play for it this year, I think that's been huge. Kershaw is always in the dugout with those rookie pitchers. He was talking about having a conversation with them on Saturday when they're getting ready to clinch, just reminding them to make sure you appreciate this. And seeing, James Outman and the relationship he has with Mookie Betts and some of the other guys, they really have done a great job of taking care of these young guys and really bringing them through. And I think that's going to be huge for the Dodgers going forward.
Yeah, and then after the game when Max Muncy took over and interviewed Miguel Rojas, and he kind of asked, specifically about the game Saturday, like, does that kind of embody the team? And you look at that Saturday game, and it was 0-0 through the 9 innings. Dodgers end up winning 6-2, but you had contribution on the pitching side: Kershaw, Sheehan, Vesia, Brazier, Gratterall, Phillips, Joe Kelly closed it out, and then you had contributions from a few guys. Colton Wong had a big sac fly. You had Chris Taylor with the big hit, Kike with the big hit. I mean, Kike wasn't on the team, in the middle of July, and Colton Wong wasn't even on the team, 3 weeks ago. So, 3 weeks ago. So, they've had contributions from almost anyone that's touched this team this year, whatever it was. And that's kind of what we talked about a lot of the times through the years. They need Mookie and Freddie to be Mookie and Freddie. And then on the pitching side, they needed, Kershaw and at that point, Julio to be them, but that wasn't the case. But they've had the young guys step up. And then on offense, everyone has had a moment. Austin Barnes has had moments that one week where he kind of won 2 games for the Dodgers or helped win 2 games. And now he's been hitting like 300 since, in the last couple months or whatever it is. So it is one of those teams where everyone has contributed. And it's been, like you said, fun to watch. And, maybe a little bit for us kind of saying, we told you so. This team was still going to be good.
Yeah, I thought about putting together a clip show of just some of the things we said before the season. Maybe we'll save that ever after they win the World Series. We have a lot more syllables to say about the Dodgers, hopefully the right number per word. We're going to talk about some of Andrew Friedman's comments about the pitching staff, and then we will dig into our thoughts on what the pitching staff should look like in October. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Modern medical care and treatment are important, but our global supply chains are fragile. Things like pandemics, natural disasters, and foreign travel may cut you off from the treatment you need. I have a wife and 3 kids, and we try to be as prepared as possible for emergencies, but medicine has always been a concern of mine. Jase Medical is the solution. Just fill out their online form, and one of their board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. I did this the other day, and it was quick and painless, just a few minutes, a follow-up email from a local doctor licensed to prescribe medicine in my state, and boom, it was done. I got my case of 5 standard antibiotics just a couple days later, and they're now in my 72-hour kit that we always keep ready. So they send your prescriptions to one of their partner pharmacies where your Jase order will be filled and mailed directly to your home. Not only this, but you can send your physician a message for answers to treatment-related questions anytime. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Hey, we are back. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers, those of you who are with us every weekday morning. We really appreciate you. If you're not an everydayer, it's really easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Also want to remind you, you can catch the Dodgers broadcast of every game on the radio on Sirius XM or the SXM app just by searching for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And we want to remind you, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. If you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through social media or email. Wow. I guess we aren't getting all the syllables right in this segment either, but that's all right. We'll give you all that contact info at the end. During the post-game clinching celebration on Saturday night, they talked with Andrew Friedman, and he had some interesting comments. He mentioned that the Dodgers pitching staff in October it'll be among the most inexperienced pitching staffs. But what he said was, but we're going to be up there in terms of stuff this postseason. These kids have big boy stuff. Big boy stuff. It's not the first time Andrew Friedman has used that phrase to refer to these young pitchers. And we saw that big boy stuff this weekend. Bobby Miller pitched really well on Friday. Emmett Sheehan was lights out in relief of Clayton Kershaw in a piggyback role on Saturday. And then Gavin Stone was almost equally lights out on Sunday. And, that doesn't even include Ryan Pepio and maybe Kyle Hurt and some of these guys. In the next segment, we're going to kind of talk about what we think the pitching staff should look like. But this big boy stuff idea, Vince, I think when we see what the Dodgers were able to do in that Braves series, when it wasn't Lance Lynn and Julio pitching, when it was the guys with the big boy stuff, the Braves looked beatable. They're still a very good team, but they looked human against big boy stuff. And, it's always going to be scary going to the postseason with inexperience, but the big boy stuff is exciting, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a point I've talked about a few times where, stuff will play up, and if you have stuff, it can sometimes balance out inexperience. If that, every player is going to be different when it comes to experience, and doesn't matter and everything else, obviously, but stuff plays up. We talked about Francisco Rodriguez a couple of times, kind of as one of those guys. David Price, we've mentioned his name before too, as like rookies that came up and had impacts on teams that made and or won the World Series. What they have in common, they had stuff. They weren't up there, no offense to Ryan Yarbrough, but they weren't Ryan Yarbrough going up there, mixing and matching pitches between 75 and 88 miles an hour. They were guys that were pumping, mid to high 90s and had, wipeout sliders and good stuff and big boy stuff. And that's, kind of what this Dodgers team has, Bobby Miller, Sheehan, Gavin Stone. And, maybe this weekend was kind of the preview of what a playoff series could look like, where all these guys are, Bobby Miller obviously extended, but, Sheehan and Stone in short spurts, and, other guys in short spurts they racked up strikeouts. They hadn't really done that before. Sheehan had what, 5 and 3 innings, and Stone had 5 and 3 1/3 innings. They both, had more strikeouts than they normally have. And, realistically, they kind of knew what the deal was. They're coming in after somebody, and they were only expected to go, a few innings, and they were able to showcase what they have. And, the Mariners are potentially a playoff team. They're not necessarily a dynamic offense, but they have been playing very well since the All-Star break. And, and again, you can only pitch who's in front of you, but there's no way to discredit what these guys did, because that's a potential playoff team that, in theory, they could play in the World Series, the same offense that they just shut down. So it was good to see, fun to see, and like I said, it might be a preview of what we're going to see. Yeah,
I mean, Julio Rodriguez is a legitimately great hitter who has been hitting out of his mind the last few months. And, the Dodgers, he got his hits this weekend, but the Dodgers kept him under control. And I mean, they've got Teoscar Hernandez is a very good hitter. They've got good hitters. And it was really a lot of fun to see. And like you said, if this is a preview of what we're going to see, if, I could envision, and in the next segment, I may make a case for this. I could envision a situation where Bobby Miller is the only starter in the postseason, the only guy who they're expecting to go 6 innings even. Everybody else, every other game is, hey, let's throw some contrasting styles at you. Let's do Clayton Kershaw for 4 innings and Emmett Sheehan for 4 innings, or 5 innings for one of those guys, get through a whole game. Let's do Ryan Yarbrough and Ryan Pepio, and whatever it is, some mix and match. And when you look at the way these guys are built up, they have so many potential starters and so few bullpen options that are actually enticing. It might make a lot of sense, and we will dig into this particular point more in the next segment. Might make a lot of sense to just go starter heavy and just say, you know what, we're not going to worry too much about roles or rotation order. It's just like, hey, how can we win a game today? Who how did we do yesterday? Who's in the lineup? And let's just go win a game today. And that, if that means Lance Lynn for 3 innings, and then Emmett Sheehan for 3 innings, and then Kyle Hurt for 3 innings, boom, let's do that. Whatever it is, let's go win a game. And with the big boy stuff, and then some of the Kershaw and Yarbrough stuff mixed in. And to be fair, Kershaw and Yarbrough both have very good stuff. They don't have big boy stuff. Big boy stuff refers to velocity for the most part, although, man, there's so many good changeups among these young players. It is like, how I love me a changeup. And like some of these changeups that Emmett Sheehan threw and Gavin Stone threw and Bobby Miller, like it was one of my favorite weekends of baseball, seeing these guys throwing these changeup and just making major league hitters look foolish. And so that big boy stuff with the great fastballs and the changeups and the sliders and everything, paired with the veteran crafty lefties and whatever Lance Lynn is at this point, there's a lot of potential for the Dodgers to turn this potential weakness into a major strength.
Yeah, it's similar in a sense to, I don't remember if it was the year in 2020 or whatever year when the Rays, they had the clock up there and they come at you from all the different angles. The Dodgers don't necessarily have that. Yarbrough is really the only one that comes at you from a little bit of a different angle, but like you said, contrasting styles or different styles. Somebody comes at you, fastball, changeup, and somebody comes at you, fastball. Bobby Miller has a bunch of pitches. It just depends which one is working that day, or if they're all working, which one he wants to throw. Or you come out, like you said, Kershaw with, from the left side, fastball, slider, location. Yarbrough, location, and some mix of pitches, and then you got, in the bullpen, you got a little bit of contrasting style. Gratterall throws hard, but not so much movement wise. You got, Evan Phillips, who's really good, Ryan Brazier, who's been really good, who continued to show this weekend that, he's been a different person since he came to the Dodgers. And with all that combined, you have a pitching staff. Now, what some people might think, and even me in the back of my head is like, Dave Roberts having to manage a pitching staff like that in the postseason can be a scary thought, but also he's been doing it in the regular season. And if he can just keep doing what he's doing and the guys keep rewarding him by pitching well, then it won't really matter in the end of who's managing it.
Yep. We're going to come back in a minute. We are going to talk more about this pitching staff and actually dig into who we think the 13 pitchers on the Dodgers postseason roster should be. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. The MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to get 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna, Shohei Ohtani. With Sleeper, you just pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times playout on Sleeper. Get your picks right and you can win big. One of the things I love about Sleeper is if you know your baseball, you have an advantage. This is not, flip a coin and do you get lucky. If you know about baseball, you can use that to win some money, which is pretty cool. And if you use promo code Locked On, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail. Check out Sleeper today. Hey, we are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember to catch the Dodgers radio broadcast every time they have a game on SiriusXM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. And remember to check out our podcast every weekday morning. Become an everydayer if you're not already. And if you are, thank you very much. So on Sunday, Vince, I went with my family. I just followed along with the game. It was kind of my hangover day. I didn't have a hangover because I don't drink, but I was a little bit tired. But my family, we went up with my in-laws up to a ski resort here in Utah that obviously isn't a ski resort right now because it's summertime, almost fall, but they still have all their summer and fall activities, including took a tram right up to the top of the mountain and then took a ski lift down and just kind of hiked around and stuff. And because of my crippling fear of heights, on the way down on the ski lift, I was sitting next to my 16-year-old son, and I told him, your job is to keep me from thinking about my impending death. And so he asked me about the Dodgers postseason roster, and we spent the whole ride down talking about what that might look like. And Logan and I came up with a 13-man pitching staff. And I'll tell you what I think, and then you can tell me what you think. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I make you nervous. I think the Dodgers really only have 5 relievers right now who deserve a postseason spot, who can help you win a postseason game. And that's the big guns. That's Evan Phillips, Brusdar Graterol, Ryan Brazier, Shelby Miller, and probably Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly's in there because of his big boy stuff more than his performance. But, like you said, stuff plays up. We've specifically seen stuff play up with Joe Kelly in the postseason. So I like Joe Kelly there. Beyond that, nobody else excites me. Nobody else says, hey, I should be on the postseason roster. I'm going to help you win a postseason series. I know there's no lefties there. I think that's okay with a 3-batter minimum. I don't think, unless you have a lefty, you can get righties and lefties out. I'm okay with that. That leaves 8 spots. And luckily, the Dodgers happen to have 8 guys to fill those spots. We got Clayton Kershaw. We got Bobby Miller. Those guys are locks. We've got Ryan Pepio. We got Lance Lynn. We got Emmett Sheehan. Got Gavin Stone. We've got Ryan Yarbrough. And we've got Kyle Hurt. I know Kyle Hurt has only pitched 1 game in the big leagues, but he looked really good. He's been very good at 2 levels of the minors this year. And we know he has the big boy stuff. And all 8 of those guys are starting pitchers, which means you can use them in any fashion you want. Anywhere between 2 and 6 innings they can give you on any given day. And with 8 guys like that, like I said in the last segment, Bobby Miller, I think you go into his start expecting him to treat it like a start and get 6, maybe even 7 innings. But then you have options. Well, you've got 5 real great relievers, or you've got 7 options to piggyback him if he does only get through 5 or even gets through 6. And you want to, we're up by 4 runs. They just couldn't hit Bobby Miller very well. Let's throw a contraction style. Let's let Ryan Yarbrough finish this one or whatever. Besides the Bobby Miller starts, I think every start, every game should be, how can we win this game? And if that means three inning stints, if it means, like we saw on Saturday, Clayton Kershaw for 4, Emmett Sheehan for 5 or whatever. You've got so many options there, and that you can play it by ear a little bit, and then you can fill in the gaps with these lights out relievers, Phillips and Brazier, and even Gratterall. Like, we talk about Gratterall a lot and how it frustrates us that he doesn't strike guys out. The dude doesn't give up hard contact. And that's, off contact is scary in extra innings, but the playoffs don't have the stupid extra inning rule. We saw it on Saturday or Friday, maybe, when big dumper, what's his name? Cal Raleigh hit one off of Gratterall. I thought was going to be a go-ahead homer for the Mariners. Routine flyout. Didn't even get to the warning track. Like, even when they put a good swing on it, it looks like they hit the ball well. It's just a routine flyout. He doesn't give up hard contact. Shelby Miller's been great. Joe Kelly can play up. I say you go with 5 relievers, 8 starters, and just throw stuff at the wall every single game, and nobody's going to get burned out. If nobody's ever thrown more than 70 or 80 pitches in a game, you've got guys ready all the time, and you've got plenty of arms to get through any particular playoff series.
Yeah, and if that was the playoff pitching staff, I would really have no qualms about it, because your qualms are Vesia, Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez. Like, there's really not much else. If Yency Almonte came back, and if he did come back, at this point, I don't know if it's justified to argue for him to be on the roster just because he hasn't pitched. And even when he did pitch before, it's like he was lights out, got hurt. He had a kind of a weird year. I think the caution with, having, and the first round you can get by with it more because there's more days off. But I think, moving forward, having that many guys that are more relief or more starters and not necessarily used to pitching every couple days is, if you do have, you're more likely to have to punt a game. Maybe if things don't go your way, you're more likely to maybe, if one guy's only effective for 3 innings, the next guy's only effective, for 3 innings, and that happens a bunch of times in a row, you might run out of innings toward the end of a series, depending how many days in between, obviously. But again, this is October baseball, and some of these guys might get pushed if that did happen, or what, we need you to throw, and you just threw 3 days ago, but you only threw 30 some pitches. That's like a bullpen. So I think you get the best stuff and probably the most comfort you feel. Vesia's had a better last 4 or 5 outings, but at the start of the month he did give up a homer against the Braves. So that's still out there scary. Ferguson he'll likely be on the postseason roster. I don't think they'll go with what you laid out, but again, I would feel comfortable with what you did lay out, but it does leave you susceptible if you think doomsday scenario.
Yeah, and I could see that, although with, they never play more than 3 days in a row. And so you only need 4 starters at the most in any postseason series anyway. And if you've got 8 starters and only one of them is really being treated as a starter, you've got plenty of piggybacking there of, 2-2-2 or 2-2-3 guys, in those next 3 games. Yeah, I think Vesia lost his last chance. I think his last chance was on Saturday when they let him come in a 0-0 game, and he allowed 2 hits, only got 1 out. And I think that was his last chance, and he proved that he's not going to be trusted with any important postseason innings. So it's either Caleb Ferguson or nobody. It's basically, honestly, I think that the question comes down to Caleb Ferguson or Kyle Hurt, from what I said, because it's going to be one of those two. I think the other 12, it's probably what we're going to see. And really, it comes down to, do they really want to go in with no left-handed relievers? If so, go with Kyle Hurt. If not, then maybe maybe a series against the Braves would be different, because the Braves do hit lefties well. And so maybe then you swap out Ferguson for Hurt for the NLCS maybe.
Yeah, and whoever they play in that first round, unless the Phillies drop off, is not going to be a strong a top tier offense. So, it'd be a good round to kind of play around with this specific way of going about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, the good news is we can officially start thinking about the postseason, because we know they're going to be there, and that's good. We're not surprised, but now we know for sure. And hopefully in the next couple of days, they will clinch that 2nd seed, which would mean they for sure won't be playing the wild card series. You got anything else for this episode, Vince?
No, looking forward to last home series of the season.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember to catch every Dodger game on the radio on Sirius XM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. If you're not an everydayer, become one by watching or listening to this show every weekday morning. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or shoot us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.